The time has finally come for electric teams to dominate in Endfield, thanks to the new and shiny Zhuang Fangyi. And in this video, I am going to cover everything you need to know about this insane electric DPS queen. I'll talk about Fangyi's best gear, weapons, team's rotations, and more in this ultimate guide video. Okay, so starting with a simple overview, Fangyi specializes in consuming electrification on enemies, and then unleashing a ton of thunder strikes, depending on how many stacks of electrification she consumed. And honestly, there aren't that many ways to apply electrification in the game right now. So I would say Fangyi's teams are kinda streamlined, and you can easily run a lot of powerful comps comprised of just either 5-star or 4-star teammates. Also, if you played Levitain, you will notice some similarities between the two because, essentially, they are both really good in dealing AoE damage, and the majority of their damage lies in the ultimate, except, Fangyi has that alternate Wuling drip style. But yeah, let's first go through her kit so you can get an idea on how to play this majestic Viceroy. And starting with basic attacks, it's a 5-hit combo which deals electric damage, and the range is pretty good. Like, I often manage to catch enemies mid-air with the final strike, so very easy to spam them mindlessly. And so moving over, let's talk about probably the most complex part of the kit, the battle skill. When casted, it will first consume electrification on the enemy, and then she will summon these Sunder Blades on the ground, which can also be visually tracked right next to the HP bar. On top of that, after a brief moment, Fangyi triggers all of the existing Sunder Blades and unleashes the same amount of attacks called Thunder Strikes. So if there are 4 Sunder Blades, 4 Thunder Strikes will be unleashed with the skill. Notice how the last Thunder Strike deals significantly higher damage? Well, that's actually how it works. The last Thunder Strike deals 6 times bigger damage than usual. But we definitely need to take a look at how these Sunder Blades are being generated. So by default, if the enemy has no electrification, Fangyi still summons 1 Sunder Blade, and this can be done for up to 3 Sunder Blades. So let's say I just use Fangyi's skill 3 times in a row, meaning on first skill, the enemy gets hit 1 time, on second skill tap, 2 hits, third skill tap, 3 hits, and then on fourth skill tap, it would still be 3 hits total, because you cannot go over the 3 Sunder Blade limit unless the enemy has electrification, which then gets consumed and you can generate even more of them. And realistically speaking, most of the time you will be generating a lot more blades with the right setups. You see, when electrification with battle skill gets consumed, Fangyi gains 1 blade by default plus 1 more blade for every level electrification had. So in this example, after Perlica applies electrification from her combo, when I use Fangyi's skill, she gains 2 blades. And then next time, when Perlica applies electrification again, now we go up to 4 blades and so on. Still, when we look at the stats of maxed out battle skill, we can see each Thunder Strike also gains an additional 9% multiplier, depending on the status level of electrification consumed. So if it's level 2, all Thunder Strikes from this battle skill would gain 18%. But most importantly, each Thunder Strike also restores 6 energy to Fangyi, and since you can have at maximum 9 Sunder Blades, this means she can potentially restore up to 54 energy per battle skill. Keep in mind, Sunder Blades remain on the battlefield for 36 seconds, so the sooner you can stack up lots of them, the more energy and damage Fangyi will utilize. Lastly, she also has a passive which grants her 18% electric amp boost for 5 seconds after using battle skill, and she also gains 2% extra per each Thunder Strike, and this bonus is applied right before damage is dealt. So for example, if she unleashes 9 Thunder Strikes, she would gain a total of 36% electric amp boost. Just keep in mind, each battle skill resets this bonus, but the duration is really only 5 seconds anyway. And then she also has another passive, but this one's more of a defensive utility, which grants her 9% chance of immunity against damage, and each Sunder Blade increases the odds by 1%, so with 9 blades that's 18% chance. And when this damage immunity is triggered, she also restores 18% of her max HP, although this can only happen every 99 seconds, so it's a fine defensive passive to say the least. Alright, next, let's take a look at the combo skill. It gets triggered when Final Strike or Finisher hits an enemy with Electric Infliction. She will then consume Electric Infliction, restore 10 energy for each stack of Electric Infliction the enemy had, and forcibly apply Electrification instead. If there was already Electrification on enemy, let's say Perlica previously applied it, then the status level of it gets increased instead. So, for example, the enemy has 2 Electric Infliction. We trigger Fangyi's combo after Final Strike, which means she restores 20 additional energy, as well as the usual energy any unit gains from their combo, and then she also consumes the inflictions and forcibly applies electrification. Frankly, in a lot of rotations, this simply means that her combo allows her to generate 3 Sunder Blades when playing with Perlica. Since one electrification gets applied from her, then you use Perlica's skill, and that electric infusion gets consumed and forcibly applied now as electrification. And with Fangyi's battle skill, now she consumes level 2 electrification and creates 3 Sunder Blades. A lot of electric words I'm throwing around today, but that's how it is with these high voltage enjoyers. Okay, finally, we can talk about the meat and potatoes of Fangyi's damage, the ultimate. It costs 240 energy and has a duration of 25 seconds. By the way, the duration of it can be tracked here. But yeah, as you can see, she transforms into Empyrean of Truth, which also grants her massive resistance to interruption, so she can just focus on unleashing big damage. Anyway, so the first thing that happens is that she gains new basic attacks, a 3-hit sequence, which you will usually spam after casting her skill or combo. Speaking of which, the first time you cast battle skill during ultimate, it will not cost any SP, won't consume electrification, and immediately creates 3 Sunder Blades. And then anytime you cast battle skill, it also applies electric infliction, so a pretty cool way to enable her combo trigger from final strikes. Plus, Thunder Strikes will have larger AoE and bigger multipliers, as you can see here. But that's not all. Her combo also becomes enhanced during ultimate. Now it has 4 times shorter duration, gains larger AoE, and higher damage multiplier. Long story short, once you cast Fangyi's ultimate, you can just spam her basic attacks along with battle skill and combo. The animation of 9 Thunder Strikes from battle skill can take a while, but you can in the meantime use her basics. Also, Fangyi has a similar problem as Levitain, where she can't perform a finisher strike on a staggered enemy. So you can just quick swap to someone else when you queue up her battle skill or something. All in all, that would be her entire kit. And when it comes to a baseline rotation, assuming you have Perlica on the team, which will be the best unit to pair with her regardless of any team comp. Anyway, it's all about alternating between Perlica's and Fangyi's skill. If you start the fight at 0 energy, use Perlica's skill, then after first final strike, both Perlica's and Fangyi's combos will trigger, which then leaves the enemy with level 2 electrification. So now use Fangyi's skill to consume the debuff and create 3 Sunder Blades. Repeat this 2 more times and Fangyi ends up with 9 Sunder Blades. And with the right gear loadout, usually this means she has enough energy to go into ultimate, and then you just simply spam her skill and combo and basic attacks in between. Any other teammates you have on the team will of course modify how you do these rotations, but the baseline always remains pretty much the same, and any differences I will cover in the team section. And yeah, there you go. You have the kit and rotation explained. Now let's move over to the build section. Alright, first we gotta talk about talent leveling priority. You first want to focus on maxing out battle skill, followed by combo skill, and then ultimate. Basic attacks are fine too, but I'd focus on battle skill and combo first, and as always, raise all the talents to level 9 regardless, since it's not that expensive. Now, let's talk about Fangyi's gearing options. Basically, the best set for her is the newest one, called Shrine Flow. The 3-set bonus provides her with 10% attack increase, and then whenever she consumes electrification, she gains buff stacks equal to the status level, each stack giving plus 15% electric damage dealt. So this is a really powerful set bonus, and most of the time, she will be able to maintain all 3 stacks easily, especially during ultimate. So that's plus 45% electric damage boost. Nice. Still, just like with every other guide, there are many ways how you can customize the final offset piece. So I will just show you a table here quickly with some of the early calcs that my buddies Catalyst Online and Low Priority whipped up. Although pay attention to the no energy section. This assumes Fangyi doesn't care about energy, so I'm referring to content that lets you start with full ultimates on the whole team. However, since we don't know yet how CC endgame mode will work, which is coming to the game eventually, my gut feeling says it's better to go for some ER because this stat at least lets you achieve rotations within reasonable amount of time. Like, I'm personally going to craft Shrine Flow Light Armor, Shrine Flow Gauntlets, Shrine Flow Baton, and then Link Slap for big damage when I start domains with full energy. But then I will swap to Eternal Shire Knight Auxiliary Arm to obtain that sweet 32% ER for Umbral, and possibly other endgame modes in the future. But if you want more granular details, here are some extra comments left by Catalyst, so big thanks to him for helping with the calcs. Alright, with the gear out of the way, what about weapons ranking? Well, as you can see, her signature Lone Barge is about 18% better compared to the next best option, Flickers in the Mist, which would have to be fully refined, and that won't be happening for a while since it's a new Battle Pass weapon. Otherwise, if the BP weapon is unrefined, it's about 27% weaker, and as you can see, a fully refined Oblivion is only slightly better. And then, honestly, the cutoff is pretty drastic when we look at the rest of the options. So I recommend, if you cannot pull for the signature, to simply get the Flickers in the Mist weapon from the newest Battle Pass. That's how I would do it. So here's a shocking revelation. Fangyi doesn't have that many different team comps. In fact, I would say she is more or less glued together with Perlica because she is going to be insanely valuable when it comes to reaching max damage potential with this Wuling Viceroy. On top of that, I would argue the same applies to Arknight. The best thing about her is that she can stagger the enemy so much, helping the team to reach those high damage output windows when the boss or elite is staggered. So this leaves us with really just one other slot where you do have quite a lot of flexibility, so it's an interesting approach currently. However, let's first go through her core teammates, and then I will talk about every last option and even provide a ranking table. Okay, so starting with Perlica, her build is quite simple. You want to equip her with the newest Qingbo set because, most important of all, it helps reduce Perlica's combo skill cooldown by 15%, so you can apply her electrification more often, which is what Fangyi cares about the most. And then the other thing would be that you can easily get Art's intensity from all the pieces, which helps improve her electrification status. So going with Qingbo light armor, 2 kits of Qingbo casque, and something like Pulsar Labs gloves as offset piece will do the trick here. And then as for the weapon, Wild Wanderer is going to be the best option since she can easily boost electric damage with it. Otherwise, there's also Oblivion you can go for as an alternative option. And then remember, you want to use Perlica's skill in combat to help Fangyi consume it with her own combo skill, while the electrification Perlica applies from her combo needs to be consumed by Fangyi's battle skill, preferably after Fangyi also consumed Perlica's electric infliction from the skill, resulting in level 2 electrification, which helps Fangyi generate 3 Sunder Blades in an ideal scenario. And it's not really that hard to achieve it, to be honest. But moving over to Arknight, you'll want to give her the new updated Frontier gear pieces. You can see an example loadout here. You'll notice Frontier's Fiber Gloves T1 and Frontier's Extra O2 Tube T1. These are the new pieces you will have to craft with Heatonite components. But if you're still not sure how long it'll take you to craft them, you can just use some other placeholder Frontier's gear pieces, since what matters the most is the set bonus. Lastly, you either want to give her Thermite Cutter weapon, which would be the best option to have. However, in teams with Akakuri, who is also a sword user, you can then equip her or Akakuri with OBJ Edge of Lightness. Ideally, you want both of these sword buffs to be active on each of them. Now, I'm sure you've noticed in my footage, but Arknight's combo pops up so often, basically after every electrification is applied or consumed, and that's because her combo only has 3-second cooldown, which further gets reduced by Frontiers, and that's why it's so easy to maintain that Frontier set bonus every waking moment. But besides that, do not use Arknight's skill. Like, never ever. Her only purpose is to keep applying a ton of stagger thanks to her super often combo triggers and the occasional ultimate she can cast, which, by the way, applies electric infliction, but the enemy needs to have none of it beforehand. So make sure to set up electric infliction of her ultimate before, so Fangyi can then consume it and gain more energy with other electric inflictions coming from Perlica as an example. But yeah, with the core team of Fangyi, Perlica, and Arknight out of the way, this leaves us with the last slot, and in here, you have several teammates to choose from. The first one that comes to mind would be Ardelia with her usual loadout shown here, but keep in mind, using Ardelia means you have to spend 100 SP once per rotation to apply her art susceptibility. However, a lot of people might already own her first potential as well, so that susceptibility becomes even better. Now there's also Antal. This guy, similar to Ardelia, will need you to spend 100 SP once to apply his focus mark on the enemy. However, if you're starting fights with no ultimates charge, I do recommend after some practice, when you know when the big damage rotation is coming from Fangyi, to only then in preparation cast his focus mark from the battle skill. You can see his loadout here, just the usual Eternal Shire Knight set, and of course, if you have it, Detonation Unit will be the best weapon choice for him. Next, there's Aviwena. Man, I still don't know how to pronounce her name. We can see her loadout as Bone Crusher gear set and Jet weapon if you have it. Although the most important thing about this unit is that when triggering combos, you need to place Perlica in the team slot after Avicenna, due to some shenanigans how combos trigger. And then the moment you enter into Fangyi's ultimate, this is where you also cast Avicenna's ultimate to gain that Thunderlance EX, which then, and only then, you will need to cast her skill once to drag back the EX Thunderlance. Honestly, she's a bit of an advanced unit to use, so I only recommend running her if you really want it. But yeah, moving over, we have Akakuri, and as I said before, if Arklight is in your team, give her either OBJ or Thermite Cutter, while other weapon is equipped on Arklight to maximize the buffing. And then, as you can see, she also wants Frontier set. The main benefits she brings would be better SP generation and weapon buff, and her ultimate, providing attack and link buff. So with all things combined together, she ends up as a super solid last slot option. Lastly, this leaves us with Gilberta, and surprisingly enough, she doesn't provide that much of a bigger advantage compared to other options. Well, except compared to Avicenna, but she's really easy to use, and you can potentially cast Gilberta's ultimate twice during Fangyi's ultimate, but it requires perfect timing, at least from testing done so far. If you run Fangyi with Link's Lab, she will also need to do one more battle skill to reach the ultimate, but again, those are really niche optimizations we're talking about. Realistically speaking, Gilberta is a 0 SP unit. You don't use her skill, just trigger her combos and ultimate. The latter, of course, should be done when Fangyi enters her own ultimate, where she deals the most damage during that time. But if you don't have Gilberta, Alish also works as a decent alternative option. Although I would say if you want to achieve really smooth performance without too much thinking, Akakuri slightly does it better in terms of comfiness. And yeah, that's about it for the teams. Here's a table of all the DPS comparisons. Keep in mind, all of these numbers are still super early calcs. Do not rely on them too much. This is just to showcase some of the theory crafting behind the scenes. But more or less, we can see the difference isn't that huge, so pick whichever last unit you think is easiest for you to utilize and go for it. Also, as an obligatory last mention, there might be teams where you can run Tong Tong or other weird option, but this is an edge case, and if anything changes, I'll let you know in the comments. Usually, getting potentials feels like a waste in Endfield. I mean, in terms of how much power you're getting out of them. Well, it looks like Fangyi is redefining this because, man, her potentials are quite cracked. For example, her first potential just straight up multiplies battle skill 1.15 times, and she even gets to generate one more Sunder Blade when starting a battle. This results in about 10% personal damage increase, which is quite big for Endfield units. And this number can go up even higher if you play with Link's Lab offset piece and use Antal in the team. Now, P2 and P3 are decent, but nothing too crazy, so if you really want to vertically invest into this Lightning McQueen, first potential is a good stopping point. But for all of you oil princes out there, P4 reducing ultimate cost might not seem like a big deal, but this ends up as a big boost since now you can just focus on pure damage gear, or basically can just use Link's Lab with no problem now. And then finally, fifth potential simply ignores 15% of enemies' electric resistance during ultimate, which results in a nice uptick of DPS. Honestly, I'd say the best thing about Fangyi is that she's a really good free-to-play friendly unit, and I would only go for her potentials because, I don't know, you just want bigger numbers, even if it's not that relevant right now. You can easily slap on her the new Sharon Flow set, equip her with the Flickers in the Mist BP weapon, and play her in a team with Perlica, Arklight, and either Ardelia, Antal, or Akakuri. Literally a team of 5 stars or 4 stars. Sorry, I know Ardelia is 6 stars, but everyone's got her. So yeah, I think Fangyi is super fun, and she's a perfect unit to pull if you're just starting the game. I mean, obviously you'll need some time to unlock Ruling Region and the new 1.2 gear recipes, but you know what I mean. Anyway, hope you found this video useful, and I'd really appreciate it if you press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, and see you next time.